yeah.
Have you ever, like, just completely blanked when you're trying to speak English?
Oh, yeah.
Like, you get so caught up thinking about all the grammar rules and how to pronounce everything perfectly
Totally.
that you just can't get the words out.
It's like your brain just freezes up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we're actually diving into a podcast today
Oh, cool.
that talks all about this overthinking trap. It's something we can all relate to, right?
Oh, sure, yeah.
Like, we want to speak well, obviously.
Yeah, of course.
But sometimes we kind of get in our own way.
Absolutely. It's so common for English learners.
Right.
And it's funny because, like, that desire to be perfect can actually end up holding you back from being fluent.
It's true. It's like you end up spending all your energy just analyzing everything instead of actually, speaking.
Right, right.
The podcast we're looking at today really emphasizes that idea.
Okay.
That the goal should be communication.
Yeah.
Not flawless English.
I like that. It's like, think about it. Do you meticulously analyze every sentence in your native language before you speak?
Of course not. I mean, who does that? And that's kind of the point here, I think.
Right. Yeah.
We need to approach English with that same kind of natural flow.
I like that.
Like, just let it come out.
Yeah.
The podcast host actually called Overthinking the enemy of progress, which I thought was a pretty powerful way to put it.
I like that too. Yeah. It really is. It's like the more we obsess over getting everything perfect, the less we actually practice speaking. And it creates the cycle of fear and avoidance.
And then what's really interesting is the podcast actually encourages us to embrace the mistakes we make along the way.
Okay.
Like they actually frame them as our best teachers, which I thought was pretty cool.
That is really interesting. Yeah. I've always
struggled with making mistakes, but I can see how they can be valuable.
Yeah.
It's like each error is a chance to, figure out what went wrong and how to improve.
Absolutely. It's all about kind of reframing our perspective.
Okay.
Instead of seeing those mistakes as failures, we can view them as valuable feedback.
Right.
Each one helps get closer to fluency.
Okay, so how do we actually make that shift?
Yeah.
From dreading mistakes to actually learning from them?
Right, right.
Does the podcast have any specific techniques?
Well, they do.
Oh, cool.
One of the techniques they highlight is recording yourself speaking.
Okay.
So you can then listen back and identify those errors and then practice those phrases.
Gotcha.
So it helps you become more aware of your own patterns.
Interesting.
And then you can kind of address them directly. That's a really practical tip. Another thing that I think can really trip us up is that constant mental translation. Like translating everything in our heads before we speak. The podcast talks about this too, right?
Yes, that was a big one.
Okay.
The host really stressed that translating everything in our heads before speaking actually just slows us down.
It makes sense.
Yeah, it's like we're creating this extra step.
Right, yeah.
That's not really necessary.
So they suggest trying to think directly in English.
Exactly.
Okay.
Even for simple phrases.
Okay.
As a way to, increase fluency and speed.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
But how do you actually train your brain to do that?
Right.
That feels like a pretty daunting task.
Well, it can feel that way at first.
Right.
But it's totally doable.
Okay.
The key is to kind of start small.
Okay.
And create an immersive environment for yourself.
So, like what? Surrounding yourself with...
Yeah, exactly. Surround yourself with English. Listen to music, podcasts, watch movies.
Okay.
And try to really internalize those phrases and expressions.
Okay.
But don't just passively consume it.
Yeah.
Actively engage with the language.
What do you mean?
Like, try summarizing what you just heard.
Oh, okay.
In your own words, in English.
Okay.
As if you were explaining it to a friend.
Oh, that's a good tip.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's about finding ways to actively interact with the language and really make it a part of your daily life. The podcast also had some advice about not waiting for the perfect moment to speak.
Oh, yeah. This is a good one.
Right.
The podcast host was very clear on this. Like, there is no perfect moment.
That's true.
So just jump into conversations.
Okay.
Even if your grammar isn't perfect.
Yeah.
It's about getting those reps in.
Right.
Building that muscle memory.
It's funny, they actually use the analogy of
really?
Jumping in a pool to learn how to swim.
I like that.
Which, I mean, it sounds simple, but
it makes sense, though.
It really drives home the point that sometimes you just have to.
Exactly. Sometimes you just got to
plunge.
Go for it. And when it comes to the fear of judgment, the podcast had a really reassuring message.
Oh, good.
They basically said that most people won't even notice those small grammatical slips.
I hope so.
And if they do, it's more a reflection on them than on you as a learner.
That's a good point.
Right. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, people are generally more focused on the content of what you're saying, not like dissecting your grammar.
Right. They're more interested in...
Exactly. They want to connect with you.
Connecting,
and understand your message.
So that's a helpful way to think about it.
Yeah.
So we've talked about embracing mistakes, shifting to thinking in English, and just going for it in conversations.
Right.
But how do we actually bridge that gap between theory and practice?
Yeah, good question.
How do we get to that point where speaking feels more natural?
For sure.
Less like a mental marathon.
Yeah. Well, the podcast really emphasizes like consistent practice.
Okay.
You know, think of it like training for a marathon.
Yeah.
You wouldn't just like show up on race day without putting in the miles beforehand.
Yeah, that's a good analogy.
Right.
So how do we apply that to speaking English?
Well, one suggestion they make is to like create these daily opportunities to speak.
Okay.
Even if it means talking to yourself.
Wait, like talking to yourself out loud?
Just out loud.
I've never really thought about that as a practice technique.
It might sound a bit strange.
Yeah.
But it can be so beneficial.
Okay.
It's a great way to just like get comfortable with the sounds of the language and experiment with different sentence structures and just get those vocal cords working.
So it's like a vocal...
Yeah. Think of it like a vocal warm-up for your English.
Gotcha.
You know, you can describe your day, narrate what you're doing, or even like practice conversations.
Oh, okay.
That you might have in real life.
Okay. I'm starting to see how that can be helpful.
Yeah. And it's definitely low pressure.
Yeah. Does the podcast mention any other...
They do. They recommend things like joining language exchange groups.
Oh, okay.
Or recording yourself speaking.
Yeah.
A language exchange group is great because it gives you the opportunity to like interact with other learners.
Right.
And, you know, share tips and stuff.
Okay.
And recording yourself allows you to, you know, hear how you sound.
Right.
Identify areas for improvement.
Okay.
And then track your progress.
I particularly like that language exchange group idea. Like having a built-in accountability partner.
Exactly. It's about finding what works for you.
Right.
And committing to that daily practice, even if it's just for like a few minutes each day.
Small, consistent efforts.
Exactly. Small, consistent efforts lead to, you know, significant progress.
Right.
And ultimately fluency.
I think what often holds us back, though, is that fear of judgment.
Oh, yes, a comparison game.
Yeah, it's so easy to compare ourselves to others.
Oh, I know.
And feel...
It's so easy.
Inadequate.
Yeah, especially in the age of social media.
Yeah.
Where you're constantly bombarded with these images and videos of people who are, you know, seemingly effortlessly fluent.
Yeah, it's like, I'll never be that good.
Right. But remember, everyone is on their own unique language learning journey.
It's true.
What you see online is often just a curated version of reality.
Right.
You know, those perfect speakers have likely put in countless hours of practice.
Yeah.
They've made plenty of mistakes.
Right.
And they still have areas where they struggle.
That's a good reminder.
Yeah.
It's so easy to forget that everyone starts somewhere. And that progress isn't always linear.
Exactly.
There will be days when you feel stuck.
Yes.
And that's okay.
It's all part of the process.
Yeah. And this actually brings up a good point that the podcast touched on.
Okay.
What does success actually look like?
Oh, that's interesting.
For an English language learner.
Yeah.
Is it about achieving native-like fluency? Or is it about something else?
Right.
It's a good question, right?
Yeah. I think we often get so caught up in this idea of speaking perfectly like a native speaker that we forget what really matters.
Right. What's the point?
Which is being able to like communicate effectively.
Right.
Connect with others and express ourselves authentically.
So if someone's listening to this and they're feeling totally overwhelmed by all this advice, where should they even begin?
That's a good question. I would say focus on one small change at a time.
Okay.
Don't try to overhaul your entire approach overnight.
Okay,
So maybe this week you commit to thinking in English for 5 minutes each day.
Okay. Yeah.
Or maybe you challenge yourself to, speak up in one conversation where you would normally stay silent.
Right. Okay.
So it's about choosing something manageable
that
you can consistently do.
That's good advice. It's like those fitness challenges where you start with a small goal.
Exactly.
Like walking for 15 minutes each day.
Yeah, just start small.
And you gradually increase it over time.
Exactly.
And it's about building those positive habits and celebrating the small wins.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And remember, you don't have to do this alone.
Right.
There are tons of resources available to support you.
Right.
Online communities, language exchange partners, tutors.
Yeah.
There's no shame in seeking help when you need it.
The podcast host actually ended with a really powerful question that really resonated with me.
Oh, I remember this.
They asked listeners to consider how much progress they could make if they just shifted their focus from perfection to communication.
Right.
It really makes you think.
It does. When we release that pressure to be perfect, we open ourselves up to so much more growth and enjoyment.
It's like that feeling of finally, it's so free.
Letting go of something that's been weighing you down.
Yeah. And it allows you to connect with the language on a much deeper level.
Right, right. And really appreciate its beauty and complexity.
This deep dive has been so insightful.
It has.
It's given us so much to think about, and it's definitely inspired me to approach my own language learning in a more mindful and compassionate way.
Me too. It's a good reminder that true growth often happens outside of our comfort zones.
Yeah, that's true.
And that embracing imperfection is an essential part of the journey.
So as we wrap up, what's one final thought you'd like to leave our listeners with?
I would encourage everyone to just take a moment to reflect on those specific steps that they can take today. To put these tips into action. Maybe it's committing to, like a daily speaking practice, or joining a language exchange group, or just, shifting their internal dialogue to be more encouraging and less self-critical.
I love it. What a great way to end this deep dive.
With a call to action.
Right.
Thanks for joining me on this exploration.
Of course.
Of overthinking. And how to overcome it.
It's been a pleasure.
It's been a pleasure diving deep with you.
Likewise.
And to all of you listening.
Yes.
Thanks for being a part of the deep dive.
Yeah.
Keep those questions coming.
Keep learning.
Keep learning and keep speaking.
Keep speaking.
Makes you wonder what we could all accomplish if we just weren't so afraid of messing up.
I know, right? Like, we could unlock a whole new level when we just kind of embrace the mess-ups as part of it all.
And it all comes back to what we were talking about before with those small, consistent actions.
Exactly. Even if you're just spending 5 minutes a day practicing, whether it's, talking to yourself, listening to a podcast, trying out a new phrase. It really adds up.
It really does.
It's like building a muscle, right?
Yeah, exactly.
The more you use it, the stronger it gets. And just like with exercise, consistency is key.
Yes.
It's not about being perfect every time. It's about showing up.
Exactly. Just got to put in the work.
Putting in the work.
Even when you don't feel like it.
Yeah, so many good insights in this deep dive.
Yeah.
I'm feeling very inspired to shake things up a bit.
Me too. It's a good reminder that we're all works in progress.
Yeah.
And that's a good thing.
It is a good thing.
Yeah.
Okay, so as we're wrapping up here. Any final thoughts for our listeners today?
I think I would just say, remember that learning a language is a journey, not a destination.
Okay.
There are going to be ups and downs.
For sure.
Moments of frustration.
Oh, yeah.
Times when you just feel like giving up.
Yeah.
But those moments are where you grow the most.
That's true.
So embrace it all,
Yeah.
Celebrate your progress.
Love that.
And never forget why you started learning English.
So well said. I think that's the perfect note to end on.
Okay, great.
Thank you for joining me on this exploration.
Absolutely.
Of overthinking and how to overcome it.
My pleasure.
It's been a pleasure diving deep with you.
Likewise.
And to all of you listening out there.
Yes.
Thank you for being a part of the deep dive.
Yes, thank you.
Keep those questions coming.
Keep learning.
Keep learning, keep speaking.
Yes, and keep speaking.
You got this.